Welcome to Playful Beginnings, a podcast about the magic of play therapy for therapists, students, and anyone interested. In our podcast, we'll explore the deeper understanding of play therapy and the skills we use when working with children.
We hope to help you understand the why behind what we do and how it helps kids heal and grow. I'm Dr. Kristie Obiola, a working play therapist and university professor in North Carolina.
I'm Dr. Maggie Parker, a play therapist and professor in DC.
Hi, Maggie.
Hey, Kristie.
It's so fun to be in the same room with each other.
It definitely feels strange.
Right?
I mean, I think not being in the same room with you doesn't feel strange.
Oh,
but
yeah.
like
recording a podcast in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's kind of confusing. Like, do I look at you? Do I look at the computer?
know.
Do I, this is a whole new
This
world.
is a different way for us to record.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Indeed.
So you guys know, Maggie and I, we've talked about this, went to school together, but a few years ago, Maggie moved close to the town my parents live in. And so being home for the holidays or being home to visit my parents means I actually get to physically see her in person instead of seeing her on the interwebs of the world or at a conference. So it's always fun because this is more like we get together for fun in these ways. So happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yeah. We're also I'm currently on break from seeing clients. So we were just kind of talking about that too, getting a little to ourselves. So getting, the fun stuff, time with family, friends, nurturance, dinners, parties, all that good stuff, which is an important part of us taking care of ourselves. And we'll have another episode on self-care.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things we were kind of talking about was parent.
Yes. Because that comes up a lot about working with parents, and because kids come with parents.
Yeah.
So it will be unique that you don't have interaction with parents.
Yes. And I think it can be, there are so many different types of parents that we're working with. And I think for me early on and for my supervisees, I'm experiencing it too, is like, it becomes really scary. They're like, oh my gosh, how do I talk to parents? And now it's gotten much easier. I think I like talking with parents, but there's so many things that come up with that too. And one, I think when I was first starting out, it's like, oh my gosh, but they're grown-ups and they're in charge, right? And I didn't feel like a grown-up.
Yes.
Then now as a mother, I have to really police myself as to like how much of my own experiences that I'm giving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting for me because play therapy is actually a second career for me. I was a child life specialist first. So I've worked with parents in hospital settings for a long time. So it was a surprise to me how many people felt apprehensive or fearful of parents, because that just wasn't my experience. Is in the hospital setting, kids come with parents. So you're working with the parents equally as you're working with the kids. So I've always had, I think, more comfort working with parents, but I have a lot of students, a lot of people I consult with that really struggle working with parents, which is so surprising because I find parents delightful to work with. I also find it really helpful. It switches my brain. I'm still doing play therapy, but like I have to switch a little bit. So it almost is like renewing in the moment to work with parents.
I do. And I think we've talked about this too, like how even like varying our caseload so that we're not only seeing children.
Yeah.
I think like working with adults brings I think almost for me, it's like I can relax a little bit more because you're still picking up on all of the nuances and stuff, but it's more verbal, which I think just as an adult, that's my mode of communication.
Yes.
And so it makes it a little bit more conversational. I also think that when we're doing parent consultations, I talk to my students about like, you're the expert in this space, right? So it's a little different. Like you're still using your counseling skills to, build that relationship, but you're also having to educate them on the process and help give them skills. And I think for you and I were so lucky because we had so many classes about play therapy and not a lot of people get that opportunity. And so
they're doing it more through workshops.
They're doing it through workshops,
conference sessions.
And so I think that expert piece is where it gets scary too, because they're like, oh, I know what I'm doing, but am I able to explain it in a way to get someone else on board?
Yeah. And I think for a lot of play therapists, we may not be parents yet. And so that idea of expert is a hard one to kind of take on because I remember being asked, like, do you have kids? Which was like my biggest fear of a question that a parent might ask. And I don't have kids. I still don't have kids, but it doesn't decrease my level of expertise. And I think that's something we kind of have to grow in as a play therapist, is this idea is you have schooling, you have a lot of other training that most parents never get. So taking ownership of that and being okay with, I might not have birthed a child.
Right.
What parents are really asking in that question, my experience is they just want to know that you can help their kid and you've got something to bring to the table, which I think all play therapists do.
Right. And I think there are ways to respond to that question. And I responded one time really bad. So I was working with a family. The parent asked me, well, are you a parent? And I said, no, I'm a doctor. And that was the worst in the world. I was like, oh my God, I can't, it was like, I just got really defensive.
Yeah.
So don't do what I did. Now I'm
I think that's the key, right? Like we can't get defensive in those moments.
right.
We just have to own and just answer the question straight up. No, I don't have kids myself.
Right.
And
And
it sounds like you're worried that I won't be able to relate or support you because I don't have my own kids.
that's a really great way of like reflecting like what they're going through.
And then I just stop there. I stop talking because it gives them an option to then speak up and be like, well, tell me more about your training or tell me about this so that I can really get to the undergirding of that question that they were asking me, which is if do you have kids, which is really, are you really able to help us?
Yeah. I do it differently and I like that way. That's really thoughtful. And I think that's why I like talking about this stuff with you
Yeah.
because you give me so much more like
Well,
introspection.
I think we both do because we don't get to talk about this with people,
Right.
right? Sometimes you're the only play therapist in a practice. You're the only
Right.
um, one, or you are feeling so unsure that you're afraid to ask these questions
Right.
of other people
Right.
out of fear that they're going to look at you less. But we need to have conversations. We need to be open and share where we're struggling or how do you respond to this? Because I keep screwing this up.
Yeah. I yes. I say like going back to the parenting thing, now I'm like what I'll respond is they already have you as a parent and that does not
Mm.
need to be my role. You've got that covered. I'm here to help
Oh, I like that.
your child in this way,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't need another parent. That does not need to be my role.
Well, I think it
Um,
reinforces how powerful they are too. And oftentimes, parents who come to see us, or my experience has been, they've tried everything. They don't know
mhm,
what else to do. They've followed a million people's advice.
mhm,
They have felt less and less confident as a parent.
right.
And they feel like they're the ones who screwed up their children sometimes. And
Yeah.
not in a, and I'm not saying that to demean parents. I think they
No,
just come to us in a state of panic, emergency. We often aren't their first call.
right. Yes. And I think it's just so, as a parent, you
Who
do
has
who
brought a
has
child to a play therapist?
yes, my children love play therapy. And sometimes they hate that I'm a play therapist and they let me know that. It is like so much of that guilt. Like, what did
Mhm.
I do wrong? And I think
Mhm.
one, by nature, just assume that I've done something wrong. I think you know that about me. But then I feel that extra layer of like, but I work with other kids. How am I not
Yeah.
able to do that? And one of my supervisees is working with someone who's the parent is a child psychologist. And so it's really hard, but she's feeling pressure, like my supervisee's feeling pressure because she's like, well, she already knows everything. Like, what can I? And I was like, no, 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 like you can't be that she can't be that for her child. Right. And
Yeah.
so she needs you. And even though the fields are similar, they're very different.
Mhm.
And so helping parents understand. And so that's when I work with parents, I think it's different. Like on the intake, I really try and form that relationship quickly. So a lot of empathy, a lot of reflection.
Yep.
And then I really let them know this is going to be a very different session than what our other sessions are going to look like because I need to ask you a bunch of questions and I might be writing them down. And this is not how it will go in the future. And so I kind of like almost like 3 stages of the intake that I do is getting them on board and really relating to them and helping them feel heard and seen. And then asking them all of the questions with
Yeah.
reflections in between so it doesn't feel like an interview.
Yeah.
And then I explain the play therapy process and what it'll look like. How do you set yours up?
So I do introductions first. I tell a little bit about my background, who I
Yeah.
am.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do paperwork first.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, there's a lot of logistical things that we need to go through before we can get into what's going on with your kiddo. So I actually go through my paperwork first. And I do that because I find I run out of time.
Yeah.
And so then I'm rushing through that. And I want us to make sure I do send it to them ahead of time so they have a chance to look at it, so they can read through. In North Carolina, we call it a rights and responsibilities page. so they can read through the rights and responsibilities of me as a therapist, professional disclosure. They're called all different things. So I
Yeah.
send that ahead of time with all my paperwork so they can fill it out and bring it filled out.
And the confidentiality.
And the confidentiality. And I review it, even
Yeah.
though they've signed it. So before I witness it on either on screen or on paper, depending how parents function, because some of my parents are still printing and bringing things in, and then some send it back through the electronic portal. I always start off is tell me what made you call.
Oh, I like
so
that.
I let them narrate first because
Yeah.
I find it answers a lot of my questions. And I say, sometimes I'm going to want to follow up on some of the stuff you're sharing. And sometimes I'm going to really sit and listen and really get a holistic picture of the struggles that you guys have been having to get you here. And then I said, I might have some follow-up questions, and then the list of questions.
Yeah.
So I try the first one. I mean, ideally, I'd love it, my first intake to be 2 hours, but it's really hard to get parents to come in for 2 hours.
Yes.
So I often have to break it up.
Yeah.
And so I'll do an hour of hearing their general concerns. And then I have a few key questions that I want to ask about safety around both for the child and the family, some history questions.
What do you mean by safety? What do you ask them?
Like, has your child ever talked about suicidality or suicidal ideation? Have they ever asked if they want to harm themselves, kill themselves, which we're seeing a rise in right now in children, that language I find in my practice is coming up more. I also work with a doctoral student, Mia Garcia, who that's her area of study. So she's really like highlighted it for me, like the need for us to do more assessment and suicidality for kids.
Let's have that be a topic at some point.
Sure.
I'm curious.
I don't feel like an expert. I'm just
maybe we should have her
we should have her come and talk about it because it's really an important topic. So I do a little bit of that. I ask how invasive the problems are they happening just at home, at school, at extracurricular activities? Who else in their life might know about the struggles they're having? I ask if they have seen any other mental health. It's on my form, but I ask because sometimes they say no on the form, but then when we're talking, they're like, oh yeah, they saw someone. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me write that down. Who did they see? When was the last time they saw them? Because I work really hard not to poach clients. It's happened to me before. So it's like one of my pet peeves that I would never want a therapist to feel like I'm replacing or taking over. And if they've seen any other type of therapist, so like occupational speech, anything like that I should be aware of. Do they have any other diagnoses? So like sensory processing, have any neurodiversity, any other family history of mental health diagnoses or concerns, both in the immediate family and extended family. If they have seen someone, I ask about medication. And then at the very end, I talk about what play therapy is going to look like, what to expect. And I also have we create a co-contract about their involvement in play therapy so that we will meet every 4 to 6 weeks. Right. That's part of the contract of me seeing your child so that their engagement is pretty high.
This is why
in some families it's more informal, right? Like we do it in between or at the end of the session when the kids are playing. Because I also try to build my sessions where I don't stack a lot of sessions. So I don't do I try not to do on the hour. I try to do like hour and 10-minute if I can.
Oh yeah.
So it gives me a little extra leeway. I can clean the playroom without feeling rushed.
Oh yeah.
But I can also spend a few extra minutes with parents. My office is in an old house and parents like to sit on the porch. So as their kids are playing, it's also, there's no one else around. So we can kind of talk freely while their kids are playing out in the yard of the old house. Fun. So it feels more informal that we can do that. Though I work really hard to maintain confidentiality. So if other people are sitting out there, we won't have those conversations.
This is also, as you were talking, like why I need someone like you, like in my life, because I forget sometimes like where I really struggle. And I think what keeps me from like starting my own practice is all of the logistic things. I'm like, oh yeah. Now as a contract with the parents, it's a great idea. Right. Yeah. So I'm more like, I'm just very like,
as you go.
Yeah. And like more big picture, if you will. And so that's why I need Kristie. This is a helpful reminder. I'm like, oh yeah, all of that stuff. Because I forget about them.
And I forget the big picture. So,
well, this is why we do well in research together. Because I'm like, I have this big idea. And she's like, okay, well, how can we actually complete it?
Let's talk this through.
So I'm like, wait, we're going to change the world. One of my favorite questions to ask parents, and this comes from Dee, is potty training. Dr. D. Ray is asking about potty training.
And why do you ask that question, Maggie?
So Dee has a theory that how a child potty trains is reflective of their personality.
Ah,
Has she talked to you about, did she talk to you all about that?
she did, but I always heard it
Oh,
differently.
how did
It's
you?
so interesting. I always heard it was a microcosm of the parent-child relationship and
Oh,
like how they interact together. So
interesting.
like it could be part of the child's personality, but then how does the parent respond to
Oh,
the child's
yeah.
personality? Are they trying to push the child quicker than they're ready to go? Are they so lackadaisical that they're not responsive, right? Like those types of,
Yeah.
because it gives you a good mirror of maybe like how they're interacting regularly. So that's how
Yeah.
I always
Oh, that's
understood it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We'll have to
because,
ask Steve which one
yeah,
is accurate.
I'll have to ask her
Maybe we're
because,
both accurate.
well, and that's like, it's so funny because I think about my own children and the way they potty trained. And now I'm looking at it from a different lens of like,
Yeah.
what does that say about our relationship? Because,
Kind of what I look for in that question is like, are parents listening to their children's cues?
mhm,
Are they ready? Are they not ready? Or is there like a pressure on them to get them ready? So, like, school tends to be a big pressure because you
mhm,
have to be potty trained to go
right.
to
Yeah.
certain schools. And
Yeah.
so they'll get a lot of pressure from that. And then you'll see them pressuring the kid, and the kid doesn't respond to pressure well, or they do respond to pressure well, right? So, it also tells you how they're interacting and how both the child responds and the parent responds. And what does that pressure look like?
Yeah. So I
So,
guess I did not pressure them. Maybe I did.
hey,
I
you
pressured them?
don't pressure your kids. No,
Oh, I was like, did
no, I'm looking at you like, for real? You're asking this question? No.
So if I like, I think this is also a microcosm of a parent consult because
Yeah.
I'm like, give me affirmation that I didn't ruin my
Yes.
children, right? And no matter how much education and training that I have. And so really like helping parents
Yeah.
feel comfortable because they're
Well, and
scared a lot of
affirmed,
times. Yeah.
right? They want to know they haven't screwed up their kids and that there's hope for
Yeah.
something to be different. And so I think it's a big role of ours is to instill hope
Hmm.
and that they are capable. So for me, a lot of the affirming and igniting them that they can also learn this stuff. So part of our time together is going to be when I find things that work in the playroom, I'm going to share them with you because
Hmm.
I want you to be able to use them at home so
Hmm.
that you're not continuing to have the same struggle. So I'm
Yeah.
also a big proponent of giving what we do away to
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. And no, I think that's a big, I really try and do that and try to make it align with what they're dealing with at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to overwhelm them with skills, right? And so trying to like do it in ways that you think will be manageable, but
Yeah.
also that will work. And I think that's where my biggest struggle is with parent consultations now that I am a parent, is because I've used them at home and I see them work at home. And so I am constantly battling like, is this a space where I like, should I tell them that I also do this?
Yeah.
And so
So how
it's like,
much do you disclose
right.
in
Because
consultations?
you don't want them to be like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
she only talks about herself, right? Like, of
Or
course it
she's the
works.
perfect
She's
parent.
right.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot actually, where people are like, you must be the perfect parent. I was like, oh no. Like, do you yell at your children? I'm like,
Yes,
yes. And actually,
daily. And the reality is what we do in the play session, we can't do 24 hours, 7 days a week
no.
for our kids. They need that balance of both structure and unstructured, right? To
Mhm.
lead and to follow, to be guided and to guide. And so I think it really is a balance of the two. And that's
Yeah.
often what I share with parents when they're like, they're just going to run amok in your playroom. I was like, no,
No.
they're really not. But yeah, but I don't always ask that question in the first parent consultation.
Really?
Yeah, because I'll on the second parent consultation, I'll do more of a developmental. So
Hmm.
I'll ask more of the detailed. I do use the Advanced Play Therapy book by Dee
Hmm.
Ray. She
Yeah.
has a list of questions. I find them very helpful. And I've also, it's been nice because I've gotten to know the child for 3 or 4 sessions
Hmm.
to kind of see from their perspective, like
Right.
who they are, what their temperament, what their personality is like. And then sometimes I've also heard from like the teacher, I've heard from maybe other people in the child's life. And I do like to do the initial with both parents, and I like
Hmm.
to do the follow up with both parents. I don't always get both parents.
Yeah.
I normally get one parent, but I
Hmm.
try to get both parents. I would say my initial, I mostly get both parents.
Hmm.
And then in the second, I sometimes just get one of the two parents.
Yeah.
Where that's different is if they're divorced. And
Yeah.
that's something I think we could spend a whole podcast of working with separated and divorced
Yeah.
parents and maybe bring someone in who works
Yeah.
with high conflict divorce because that looks very different.
Yes. Dr. Lynn Etheridge in Mississippi, she was a former lawyer
Mhm.
and is a play therapist. and she does high conflict.
Yeah.
And she goes to court all the time. Actually, we should bring her on. That'd be
Yeah.
great.
So, but just kind of how do we maneuver that? Because it is an anxiety producing when I see divorce. I won't fib. That's when I was like, oh, please don't let it be high conflict.
Yeah,
Because
it
it
makes
gets
it really
messy.
hard.
But I do, again, I contract with both parents, like what the expectation, what my purpose is, that stuff. But I think we should spend an episode just talking about working with parents who are separated or divorced.
Yeah, because I do think like as we're kind of going through all of this, it's like this is when parents are on board
Mm-hmm.
and they're engaged,
Yes.
it's really great, but that's not always the way it is,
I
right?
think parents are skeptical.
I think parents are skeptical. I think they're scared. And okay, other things that we talk about with parents.
So I do think a big part of the initial parent consultation is helping the parent feel comfortable with who their child is going to see. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really building a relationship with the parent as much as it is with the child. Now, I'm not doing the parent's counseling session.
Right.
But I do want to make sure that I am building good rapport with them so they feel a level of trust. Because I also see then that trust transfer over to their child. Because if a parent can trust me, right, and the parent is giving messages to their child, they trust me. So ways we might do that, it's really doing a lot of active listening and reflective responding with parents. So we are rewording, restating what they let me make sure I'm understanding you.
Seems like this is
really challenging for you. This sounds like it makes life difficult. So I'm really like partnering with the parent at that moment so that they don't feel like they're living on an iceberg on their own.
Yeah.
Right. That they're still part of the mainland.
Right.
Right. And how, even if there are maybe crevices and cracks, here is how I think play therapy will help in these areas for you. So I'm also telling how I think my skills can be helpful so that they're gaining confidence.
Yeah.
And if I don't know, I don't pretend to know. I say, that I might have to think about that. And if it's not in my wheelhouse, I'm owning it's not in my wheelhouse, right? I'm not saying I can do something that I'm not sure. And if it's a new area that I haven't done before, I tell parents I might have to seek consultation on this. It'll depend on how comfortable you feel. I could also try to find you someone else. And I use this analogy a lot. I use it with adult clients, teenagers, and parents in particular. I say that counseling, finding the right counselor or play therapist is like finding the right pair of jeans. Sometimes you have to try a whole bunch of pairs on before you find the right fit. Sometimes you think it's the right fit. You get home, you wear them 2 or 3 times, and you're like, this doesn't fit well. I don't like these. Finding a counselor can be like that too. So please know at any point if you don't feel comfortable or this is not feeling like a good fit, let me know. I won't be offended.
Right.
And I'd rather help find you a person of what you're looking for. So if I'm not that right, then let me get you connected with someone else who could feel like a better fit.
Yeah.
And typically they're looking for someone more directive.
Yeah. In my experience, it's been like that too. And I think it really is meaningful to clients when you do say that.
Yes.
I think they really appreciate it. I will always end up, my intakes like that. Like, hey, listen, like this is important that you feel comfortable.
Yep.
And it's okay if you don't. I'm going to go ahead and put a hold on this date and time because I don't want it to get filled. And you let me know at any point before that if you don't feel comfortable and I will take it off. And I think they really appreciate that. The other thing that I do with parents is I do try and reflect like how much they love and care for their child. And we forget that and how much love is there and how hard this experience is for you. And it's very affirming for parents when you say that. I feel like that is something that really connects. And I think so, like for people who are listening, is just remembering that because sometimes we can get really frustrated with parents, especially like when there's like attachment stuff happening or there's parenting things that perhaps we wish they wouldn't do or we don't think are as helpful.
That was going to be the question I had for you. When parents bring up something that you feel might be harmful, and I think the common one that I get asked is thanking, right? Like, how do you respond to that? Because it does come up in the intake session often when you ask, how do you handle that? Because that is one question I sometimes will follow up. Like, how do you guys manage that at home? Right. So he's always talking back or she's always doing this or they do this, right? I'll say, what does that look like in your house? How do you manage that? How does your partner manage that? How does your ex manage that, right? If there's conflict there so that I have a better picture. But how do you respond to the spanking question?
And I've done a lot of work on this,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of research, and because there's cultural implications,
Yeah.
right? And so I had one of my students, Mahogany Persip, she's amazing. And she was like, this is very common in the African American community. And it is a way in which to protect children, because what happens outside could be much, much worse. And so working with my other doctor student, Kate Anderson, and Dr. Deborah Ojambo in Uganda, recognizing the cultural piece of spanking and how Deborah handled it, and I think this is how I will continue to handle it, is how is that working for you?
Yeah.
Because it's not a judgment of what you're doing, but a question, is that working for you? And it's often not, whether it be yelling or spanking or whatever it is. And so then I'll kind of go into, these are some of the messages that could be being sent in that way. Like, it's, we hit when we're angry, then they try and avoid getting caught because they don't want the consequence. Or by yelling, when they're escalated and you escalate, everyone just escalates.
Yeah, the volcano effect.
Right. And so and I'll explain that, like, with the brain, and like, they're in their brainstem in those moments. And so what they really need is, like, if you think back when they were a baby and how you had to soothe them, like, calm yourself and regulate yourself, and how can you do that? And so I'll kind of give skills around that. And one thing, especially if they're partnered, it's really helpful to tap in. Right. And so, like, I'll have to tag out if I'm becoming too dysregulated.
Yeah.
It's harder when you're alone. I think that makes it really, really tough. And so finding ways, it's like, okay, so what are some ways in which you can take care of yourself in those moments? To regulate yourself so that they can regulate. So that's how I handle it. How do you handle it?
I don't handle it in the intake. I wait to parent consultation to do it.
Yeah.
And my rationale for that is I don't want them to feel judged off the bat in our relationship. Now, if they're doing something really harmful to their child, I am a big advocate of telling them, it's already in our paperwork up front, right? That I'm a mandatory reporter, all that stuff.
What does that look like?
What does that look like? Like, this would be a moment that what you're describing right now is something that I am going to have to report. And I want to be transparent with you, because I don't want anything to be a surprise to you, unless I think the parent would retaliate against the child. That's the only time I won't tell them that I'm reporting. But I tend to, like, disclose that. Yeah, it's a conversation. It comes up down the road. I'll note it in the intake, because I'll say, how do you guys handle that? We spank. Okay. And I think they're surprised, because I think they're used to being lectured about that's not a good approach. And sometimes they'll say, I don't know if that's the best way. And I was like, well, let me get to know your child better. Let me hear more about what's happening from you. And maybe we can tackle that in a parent time, unless that's something you really want to focus on today. And then if they're like, I do want to focus on today, then I'll kind of go into a case that pops up to me as I was doing an intake with a mom and a grandmother. And so I brought it up, and I think I said, how does that feel like that's working? So with no judgment, just kind of, I want to hear from you guys. And they're like, it works great, except he was coming because he was aggressive at school and he was hitting kids, and the caregivers talked about him hitting at home. That was his way of problem solving. And I wasn't reactive at all. I just said, okay, right. And I just kind of noted it. And the mom said to me, she goes, what do you think about that? And I was like, oh, did I give you an opinion? Like, I had an opinion about that? And she's like, well, everyone we've told that to has gone into a lecture for us. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on it. And I said, I can't say I'm pro spanking, and I can't say I'm against spanking, because for some children, that is the method that works the best. What I'm hearing from you is, although it stops your child's behavior, it sounds like it's showing up in other ways. I'm wondering if what this kiddo has learned is, when you get upset, when you get frustrated, when you do something like that, how you express yourself is through hitting others. And it was like an aha moment for these caregivers. They were like, they looked at each other and they're like, we've never even thought of that. Right. So because people lectured, they got defensive.
Right.
I said, if it's working, I'm not here to correct things that are working. But if they're not working, I'm here to help you figure out some other tools for your toolbox to use, because it's not something I normally jump into in a consult, but it like stands out to me as a kind of a case, but it tends to come up later. And sometimes parents won't disclose it till later,
right?
Because they're afraid of our judgment. And so Can I ask you one more question? Because we've jumped into parent consultation, like that first
Yeah.
intake, but that's not our first interaction with a parent.
Oh, like on the phone
The
or?
phone.
Yeah.
Like, do you do anything special when parents call to set up appointments?
No. Well, so I'm not in practice now.
Okay.
And for the last 6 years of practice, there was a scheduler. And so they would just put them
Ah,
on my
okay.
case. I would call them before and
Mhm.
say, my name, and
Yep.
I'm excited to talk to you. This first session will be just for us.
Yes. Oh, that's something else we haven't talked about.
Yeah, not including the child in the intake.
Yep.
But yeah, I just try and be really warm and thank you for reaching out. And
Yeah.
do you do something special? Is there
No, but it's
something I'm
something I
forgetting?
think sometimes it can feel really methodical to people. And so I know when I'm talking about working with parents, I encourage my students to do their first few phone scheduling with a mirror in front of them.
Oh, yeah.
So, because if you're not smiling, sometimes that comes across on your voice.
Huh.
And so, just to kind of train yourself to be more engaging,
Yeah.
I'll encourage them to like look in a mirror while they're talking
You know what?
so that they can, and because if they see
Yeah,
themselves like having a reaction, like just to note that, and does their voice change or things like that,
that's so funny.
remembering that that is your first contact
Yeah.
with parents. And so making sure
Hmm.
you're warm, you're engaging. So I'm in private practice, so they come to me. I don't have a schedule to do that. So I get those initial calls, trying to be responsive quickly. Sometimes that's my hiccup because I just practice 1 or 2 days a week. And so making sure like on our webpage that's actually noted on there that I'm only in the office Thursdays
Hmm.
and Fridays. So I tried to just work private practice Thursdays and Fridays. And really now it's just Fridays. It's not even Thursdays anymore, so that I can be pretty consistent so that they know if you call me on a Monday, I might not get back to you till Friday. Now, if I have an established client, that looks
Yeah.
different. But like a brand new client, because those initial phone calls can sometimes
Take a while.
and they kind of spur into intake
Yes.
sessions. And so you have to also know like this is really great information. Unfortunately, I'm not somewhere where I can write this stuff down. I'd love to talk to you this in our intake session. Let's see if we can get that on the schedule. So sometimes you're doing more redirecting
Yeah.
in that initial phone call.
Yeah.
And so
Having to establish those boundaries.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it is hard. And I'm always surprised at how much information people kind of give you up front.
Hmm.
And I think that's probably anxiety and maybe some nerves. Like, I'll just tell it all.
Hmm.
Right. Which I appreciate. But then it can be overwhelming on the other end because it kind of just gets dumped in your lap and you're like, okay, let's. Because I also want to relate it back to play therapy, not on
Yeah.
the phone
Right.
call, but like in the intake, I want to relate it how play therapy could be helpful in this scenario. So, and then the last thing I wanted to share is so when I end my intake, my initial intake, I summarize.
Hmm.
Do you do the same thing?
Hmm.
Like I'll go back through. So let me make sure I've got like the key components.
Hmm.
And if parents give you a lot of things, because sometimes they have a lot of things, I try to help them. Like what I've heard you say is A, B, C, D, E, and F. If we had to pick three of those things right up front to start with, what are the three most important to you? And then we'll look at kind of layering, like what would be next. So when I meet after the second parent intake, then I'm starting to talk about treatment planning, but then I'm going to focus on those A, B, and C, not all the way to F, because I
Yeah.
can't always capture all of those, even though they're typically related.
Hmm. I feel like we could probably talk about this for like,
Oh, days.
yeah.
I teach a whole class on this, y'all. I can talk about this for 16 weeks.
Well, yeah, I think this is like a good kind of like overview.
Mm-hmm.
And we could probably like do another episode where we talk about
Or
like
a
very
few, just
detailed.
working with
Yeah.
parents, how when parents get stuck or they have.
Mhm.
Yeah, let us know what you guys want. What support do you need when working with parents? If you have some common things that come up, go ahead and put it on our email.
Yep.
Which is
Playful Beginnings Podcast at gmail.com.
And then
Website coming soon.
Yep, we're working on that. And
Yeah.
then so that we can be supportive and helpful to you because we don't have all the answers and you might be struggling in areas that Maggie and I might not have thought of.
Yeah.
And we might be struggling there too. We just haven't, it isn't in our awareness. So
Yeah.
let us know. We want to hear from you guys. And we hope you have a wonderful start to your new year.
2025.
Here it comes, ready or not.
Oh, geez, I just got used to 24.
I'll mark that wrong a lot of times on things that are coming forward. 2024 will be the
Forgotten
year
year.
for a few weeks at least.
Yeah.
And then crossed off and say 5. So, Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year.